how much can we, Ms. O'Hanlon, expect coordination and cooperation at the to-be-held nuclear summit on the issue of the North Korea nuclear weapons?
Well, that's an excellent question. You know that the summit could cover many issues. And today, President Obama had an article in the Washington Post, the largest newspaper in Washington, D.C., and his agenda for the future of nuclear security was extremely expansive. He went back to issues like trying to create a nuclear-free world, trying to resume the path towards deep cuts in offensive weapons with Russia. He had many ideas about North Korea and about the INF Treaty. He was really all over the place, and it was good in some ways, but it was also a little bit concerning to me because it seemed to be getting away from the core purpose, the original purpose of the Nuclear Security Summit, the agenda for actually securing dangerous materials, which most countries could agree on. And now it's trying to get into the more contentious issues like the one that you raised. In theory, we're all against a North Korean nuclear program. In theory, we all agree that we need to put more pressure on Pyongyang. But of course, on this issue, China and the United States often disagree about the degree to which we should be putting real strong economic pressure on North Korea. And therefore, this could be a potentially acrimonious issue, or we could try to paper over it, just speak about it briefly, and move on to something else.
And Mr. Zhao, since Mr. O'Hanlon already mentioned China, I'll let you to come in here. China has been advocating about the full implementation of the resolution by the United Nations Security Council, which includes, of course, the sanctions, but at the same time working on possibilities of dialogues and negotiations in the near future. What do you make of China's stance? Will this stance stick to by the Chinese side this time also at the Nuclear Security Summit?
I think there are at least two reasons why China implemented these UN security sanctions very well. One is China wants to send a signal to North Korea that if you violate UN Security Council resolutions, you have to bear the consequences. You have to be punished. Secondly, China wants to make sure that through these tighter sanctions, North Korea won't have access to military nuclear materials and technology. I think the problem we are facing today is some countries, including the US and South Korea, are imposing sanctions for the sake of imposing sanctions themselves. They do not have a strategy to get everyone out of this negative cycle of action-reaction.
All right, we've already got some tensions in the discussion. Let me go to our South Korean guest, Ms. Lim. Welcome to our program. Thank you for joining us. One of the things we are going to expect is a trilateral meeting between the United States, South Korea, and also Japan on the issue of the DPRK nuclear one, and also some of the other policies related to nuclear issues. What do you think can be expected this time, particularly on the very thorny one of the deployment of so-called THAAD, which China and Russia are pretty much against?
Okay, thank you for that question. I do see, as Mr. O'Hanlon pointed out, the original purpose of the NSS, Nuclear Security Summit, was preventing any that kind of nuclear material from the terrorist threat. Which means the original, if you're recalling the original purpose of the summit, again, the DPRK's nuclear issue was less related to the original purpose of the Nuclear Security Summit. But as we all know, I mean, ever since their first nuclear test, which was followed by their another nuclear missile launch, this is the first time ever. I mean, to have of course, except Russia, but every other the key top leaders of the key countries together. So I do believe this is a kind of rare and pretty precious opportunity for the presidents or the prime ministers of the key countries to think about it together. So some probably theorists will describe this as a kind of gift basket opportunity. So I do want to see that kind of more like deepened more progress robust discussions among the key countries, of course, including Japan and China as well. Mm-hmm.
Right. How China is doing it is going to have a big impact, and of course, also having a big impact on China's negotiating power this time at the nuclear summit, once we touch on the DPRK nuclear issue. Mr. Zhao, your input here.
Regarding the THAAD deployment issue, I think THAAD deployment will have a negative impact on Chinese security interest. But more importantly, from the Chinese perspective, THAAD indeed can help protect the southern part of South Korea. But the deployment of this system will further promote North Korea to double down its efforts on nuclear development. So that's a Chinese concern as well. Recently, U.S. has offered invitations to have a direct discussion with China on THAAD. I think that's a good development. There should be direct coordination among the three, U.S., China, and South Korea. In terms of Chinese economic ties with North Korea, we have to bear in mind that we cannot cut off the economic lifeline to North Korea, because the only way to peacefully resolve North Korean issue in general is to gradually encourage North Korea to liberalize its economy, to come again, to become a normal international member again.
Right.
So cutting off its economic timeline to press the North Korea into the corner is very counterproductive to that long-term goal.
The concern people have, Mr. O'Hanlon, is that there are two possibilities. One biggest danger is a third party, let's just say not a state, but rather terrorist groups or individuals stolen or steal a nuclear bomb. We don't know how they are going to do that, what they're going to use, how they are going to use it, but that was the biggest scenario and the biggest danger. And another scenario could be that a third party steal a dirty bomb or make a dirty bomb that could even be suited into a suitcase, carry it anywhere with him or her, and therefore create a terrorism around the world. What do you think about these possibilities, particularly when you have now nuclear materials, enriched nuclear materials, shall we say, spread around the world, including in DPRK, including in other countries as well. So how much possibility are we facing right now, Mr. O'Hanlon?
Well, I think you did a good job of summarizing the reason for these nuclear security summits. And fortunately, there's been a lot of progress. Things are overall much better globally at keeping sensitive nuclear materials well guarded and keeping them in secure sites. I do not think the chance of a terrorist stealing a nuclear bomb is very high at all, largely for that reason. But you're correct to also point out the ongoing threat of a dirty bomb. A dirty bomb is not a nuclear weapon per se. A dirty bomb, as you know, employs nuclear waste, radioactive waste, and disperses that with a conventional explosion in a way that would contaminate a city or part of a city for a very long time, requiring evacuation of that area and then a very costly cleanup, or waiting for decades or hundreds of years for it to naturally clean up on its own. So that is still a worry. There are still a number of places in the world that have nuclear waste relatively poorly secured. And even though I'm not all that concerned about a terrorist stealing a nuclear weapon, I still think we have more progress to make in lowering the odds of that issue as well, by better securing, for example, the nuclear fuel economy in a number of countries that have nuclear reactors and may not do a good enough job of keeping those reactors safe or keeping the fuel cycle that is important for those reactors completely secure. So there's a traditional agenda here that needs more work, and I hope we stick with that this week.
How much do you think a player China will be in on this specific subject of making sure the materials related to nuclear would be securely stocked and also not going to spread to terrorists, and also make sure the safety for the civilian use when it comes to nuclear power?
Yes, China is clearly a very important player in the civilian nuclear industry. China has the world's most ambitious civilian nuclear energy development program. And China, for the last several decades, has taken a wide range of measures to enhance its nuclear safety and security. It has put in place a wide range of domestic laws and regulations to enhance safety and security of nuclear materials and facilities. And internationally, China, together with the US, has built the world's largest nuclear security center of excellence, which can make a big contribution to joint research on nuclear security technology. And China will help to train foreign nuclear security personnel. So that would be a very important contribution from China to international capacity building on nuclear security.
Ms. Lim, before we go, final words from you as well. What do you think China can do, and also South Korea as well, in terms of civilian use of nuclear power? How much potential are we facing right now?
Yes, thank you for that asking that question, because I'm also personally researching on all this back-end fuel cycle issues, and I do believe all these Asian Pacific countries, especially this region specifically, is the rising, or actually market of the nuclear industry, and the biggest concern of the nuclear power for civilian purpose is definitely the spent fuel issue. So I do hope, or I want to see in the future, more cooperations among these major nuclear power countries in the Northeast Asia. We can probably think about together kind of collective management for the spent fuel issues, or better management or better cooperative management system among ourselves, or even cooperation with the United States too. So I'd love to actually see that kind of more multilateral approach to the spent fuel issue, which is hard to solve by one specific country alone, probably.